some kind of worm has entered the Apple. Okay, there's been a bunch of executives retiring slash moving towards other companies over the past few weeks, to the point now where it's getting hard to ignore. For a while I thought, well, maybe it's just a coincidence, you know, there's some new pay packages available, but this is really starting to look severe when people who have made Apple what it is today are seriously considering leaving or have already left. For example, in the past week, Alan Dye has announced departing from Apple. Again, not because he's reached retirement age and he wants to spend more time with his family, which is the corporate version of we want to look unified, but someone is still upset. But Alan Dye's been working at Apple for the past 10 years. But it's not just the software and design side of things. Senior Vice President Kate Adams and Lisa Jackson, the gal who was on Apple's roof, decided she has to get off the roof, okay? She's not gonna be there anymore. She was the vice president for environmental impact and their policy and social initiatives. Why are they leaving now? They could just be nearing that age, but it's awfully convenient of them to be leaving at the same time as everybody else. And their AI chief, John Guillain-Andre, is also departing at the same time. Again, could be a situation where they want him to leave, but they don't want the public thinking that he was fired or let go, so they just publicly state that someone is stepping down or just retiring. But you guys remember how there were a lot of talks about Apple developing more like smart home accessories, maybe even robotic ones that have arms and screens that can pivot around the room, kind of like tabletop robotics? Well, a lot of the engineers that were looking into making that technology possible for Apple are also being poached by Meta. John Zhang, their AI and software robotics leader, has also now departed for Meta. The user interface team, which is super important to me because I feel like that's kind of what made Apple so iconic and very difficult to articulate why people like it more than Android. It all comes down to how the user interface flows, how friendly it is. A lot of what makes Apple what it is today is made from these employees that are now departing. Billy Sorrentino, who had been at Apple for a long time and made a lot of what iOS is today, also departing Apple simultaneously, and it doesn't stop there. Some employees have followed Johnny Ive over to Love From, and even OpenAI, a company that partnered with Apple with, you know, the ChatGPT integration with Siri, they've started taking some employees as well, like Chang Chen and Tang Tan, who were both crucial to making Vision Pro as immersive as it was. These were display guys. Okay, so it's not just software people. Couple along with that, Abadur Chowdhury, the designer behind the iPhone Air that so many of you seem to love so much despite the poor sales. He also left the company to join a different AI startup. They also lost Richard Block, who was the dean of Apple University, which is this internal program that's sole purpose was to preserve the company's policies and culture. Not to even mention, of course, the CFO Jeff Williams, who announced retirement earlier this year. And sure, you could throw all of these together as coincidence, you know, they're approaching retirement age or Meta's on a hiring spree. But what really got me nervous is the last name on this list. The latest reports are saying Johnny Srouji is seriously considering leaving Apple, and this is not because of retirement. He specifically sent a memo to Tim Cook saying that he will intentionally go work for a different competing company as soon as he departs Apple, which in my opinion, this many departures is indication of some kind of company culture shift. This is way too many big names for it to just be a coincidence. And again, it's not all Meta, it's not all OpenAI, it's across the board. So no one is actually really going to know. Of course, on Tailosive Tech, what we love to do here is speculate, but my personal guess that not everybody's gonna agree with, and I'm sorry to get political a little bit, but I feel like the political climate at Apple must have shifted a lot when Tim Cook decided he was going to essentially bend the knee to the president in order to sidestep getting as many tariffs as possible. That seems to be everybody's running theory as to why Tim Cook has been so overly positive towards this administration compared to previous ones, making all of these bold claims and literally making artifacts for the president's desk and presenting them to the public. There's like abiding by the rules and policies of an administration, and then there's kind of treating the president like royalty, which may have pushed a lot of people at the company over the edge a little bit. And I think there's very likely a certain culture that probably feels a little bit gross now. It's a little bit like, yeah, okay, we sidestepped the tariffs, we got the approval, so we didn't have to raise prices on iPhones or iPads or that kind of thing, but at what cost? There's another cost that's not as much financial, which is just that Apple will say or do whatever they have to do in order to prioritize their profits, which, yes, they're a company. Of course, they have to prioritize profits. They're literally bound by law to do what is best for shareholders, I guess, but it's never just been so abundantly obvious how far they're willing to go than it is right now. And I think that kind of interrupts a lot of the loyalty to certain companies people may have had. Johnny Srouji has been at Apple for many, many years, designing the incredible silicon that goes into the iPads and the Macs and the iPhones that so many of us have come to love and enjoy, and say that this is the kind of performance per watt that we cannot get on non-Apple products. So to see him depart like this and genuinely tell people that he's intending to join another company, the long short of it for me is people realize that, well, if this is truly all about money, there's no integrity anymore. There's no, here's what the company stands for. It's just do whatever you gotta do, say whatever you gotta say to prioritize the most possible profit, then I guess I'm gonna go to the company that offers the bigger paycheck. I'm sure it's not necessarily a great look on your resume to depart a company purely because you got offered a better deal from another one, especially when you've actually taken up screen time on Apple events like Johnny has. So many people that are not even like deep core Apple fans knew who some of these guys were, and if so many are willing to step down or leave for other companies all at once, then I don't purely think it's just like Meta and OpenAI offering more money. I think there's a little bit of company culture that's likely been fractured from something, and it's gonna take a lot to turn this around. I'm not saying I'm boycotting Apple today because, as you guys know, pretty much all big tech companies have made all kinds of promises and claims to the president in order to try to please him and sidestep as many tariffs as possible. But I think the only thing keeping a lot of these people at Apple was that feeling that Apple is different. They kind of stand out from the crowd in a way. So it was more than just about the money to them, and maybe seeing their leader act in such a disingenuous slash totally different from where he stood before is making them feel like, well, if this is all just about the money, then I have no loyalty to this company anymore. I'd love to hear your guys' theories on what the company culture fractures could have been caused by and what it's going to take to kind of turn it around. I actually think with all these senior executives leaving simultaneously, maybe now is a good time for Tim Cook to actually cut his ties. You know, he's 65 years old now. He's nearing retirement age anyway, and bring in some new blood with some different perspective for the company. And maybe a John Turnus taking over the CEO role is exactly what we need right now, and let Apple go back to its core, back to its roots of, you know what, let's focus on not necessarily doing what is most profitable for the investor, but let's just focus on making the coolest possible products we can and leaning into our advantages, not trying to ride the coattails on whatever the latest trend is. I think that's the sour taste in everyone's mouth right now from Apple Intelligence. It wasn't really something Apple was set up to do great at, and that's why we're losing so many AI people from Apple at the same time. There were so many promises made that weren't delivered on. They literally had to take down advertisements because they were showing off features that they later found out we have no clue how to do this. And with the Vision Pro headset being kind of a big flop, there was some impressive technology there, no denying that, and I think a lot of us were excited for what that headset could eventually become in the form of glasses, but now all of the people in charge of making that possible are seemingly leaving for Meta. Yeah, it definitely feels like Apple in many departments is kind of following the, here's what the market trends are, let's just tackle those, rather than purely innovating and trying to figure out where can we actually excel with our in-house hardware and what is our team truly good at. And my hope is that a new CEO could actually bring that fresh perspective and maybe bring on some new talent, or at least find a way to appreciate that talent better than what Tim is doing, which may have a fairly large impact on why so many people are leaving. But again, we speculate a lot here. If you don't like speculation, don't watch this channel because that's pretty much all I do. But feel free to let me know why you think so many people are leaving simultaneously down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I am Team Turnus. See you in the next one.